BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Amy Canavan and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Tuesday the 14th of January, and the games just keep on coming.
Engels takes a couple of steps back, steps up right footed, right down the middle and right into the back of the net. It's Celtic 2, Dundee 0.
Dundee play host to Celtic this evening, fresh from drawing with Rangers last week. Can Tony Docherty's side pick up anything from the other half of the Old Firm? And a familiar face returns to Scottish football, and rumours swirl about a departure.
Ball at the back post, Shanklin with a header! He scored! At last, Lawrence Shanklin!
Could Lawrence Shanklin be off to Turkey? More on that while Calvin Ramsey signs on at Kilmarnock. Plus,
it's kind of mixed between the fans, isn't it? There's the boos went up because they saw the Union Bears leaving, and then there was a few from the other stands left as well. And then, to be fair to the rest of the crowd, they got right behind the team.
After a weekend of disharmony at Ibrox, where has the dust settled at Rangers?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Joining me on this episode of the podcast is former Celtic and Dundee striker Cillian Sheridan. How are you this morning, Cillian?
Very good, Amy, thank you.
Fantastic stuff. And for the first time on the Scottish Football Podcast, the chief football writer for the Scottish Daily Mail, Stephen McGowan. Stephen, it's great to have you on with us. Were you aware that it was a 6:30 record when you signed up for this?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's very clever asking people before you tell them that, I have to say.
That's what we do. We're sneaky around these parts. Sneaky. It's how we do it. There is plenty to get our teeth stuck into at this ungodly hour, but let's start by looking forward to tonight. That's if we're all still up in time for this game. Two of your many former clubs this evening, Cillian, facing each other at Dens Park, of course, Dundee and Celtic. Celtic left it a little late on Saturday against Ross County, it must be said, in freezing conditions. Of course, Brendan Rodgers spent a fair chunk of his press conference yesterday speaking about his strikers for very different reasons, Kyogo and Adam Ida. And let's start with Adam Ida, actually. He led the line in the Highlands. Kyogo was out wide for a multitude of reasons, lots of injuries, lots of players missing for Celtic. He hasn't scored since November, of course, didn't score at the weekend, and Brendan Rodgers addressed that, he backed them, but there's a fair few fans voicing their feelings around this, isn't there? Do you think that he does enough in a game for Celtic when leading the line?
I think he's struggling at the minute in terms of he doesn't have that goal. I think that's what he needs first and foremost. In the game the other day, he had a few nice touches. He's still getting involved in games. I think he's just can't get that goal. And I think the longer it goes on, the next game then it becomes bigger and bigger. There's always the price tag is always there over his head as well. That's not really his fault. So I think coming in, there's a lot of pressure. It's also hard to generate momentum when you might get a start a game here or there. You might get the tough away games. You're not getting the nice games at home where Celtic are always dominating and attacking, where teams are kind of sitting back a little bit more. So it's been tough for him, but look, that's part of being a Celtic striker. If you want to come up and be that £9 million striker, the main guy, then you probably need to be able to deal with all that. It's definitely a testing time for him, I think, and probably helps him that Brendan Rodgers is coming out and backing him.
Yeah, you're right. Strikers are always going to be judged on goals, but as a fellow striker, whenever you speak to anyone, it's always about the play that they're also involved in, the dragging away defenders, whatever it may be. What do you see when you look at his attitude, perhaps when he's even departing the pitch on Saturday? Do you think that he's feeling the effect, perhaps, of the noise that's coming from the stands? Because as you mentioned, that price tag, not his fault, but it does carry a fair bit of weight for him.
Yeah, no, I could see, as far as I remember, I'm sure when he came off, he didn't look too happy. He looked a bit annoyed, which he's probably thinking, just keep it. He probably knows that there's going to be more goals in the game. There's going to be more chances. And it's a big thing. The longer you stay on a pitch, especially a team like Celtic, near the end of games is when other teams will tire chances will appear. So probably annoyed that he's not getting a chance to play full 90 minutes and get those other chances where he might get that goal, and then that just kind of releases everything. Like, he can then probably relax a bit more. He doesn't have to play with the weight of, right, it's now been 9 games, then it's 10, 11 games and so on. So he probably is just looking to get that goal as quickly as he can, I think.
It's hard work trying to displace Kyogo Furuhashi, especially when he's even scoring when out wide. Stephen, there is plenty of speculation, as ever, but it's really cranked up this window, I feel, around a potential move for Kyogo. There was the apology last week from out in the States, the MLS, where there was that little error. Where do you think the striker will end up come the end of the window?
I think that's a good question. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. I know if you listen, when I wrote the story about Atlanta being interested in Kyogo, I think they want him. I'm not convinced he wants them. I'm not sure it's reciprocated. I think that's probably why Atlanta started looking at other strikers, including Hodgson Edouard. And also a striker from Middlesbrough, I think about £18 million for. So I think Kyogo probably feels he's 30 in 10 or 11 days' time. He's got one big move left in him. He's got one chance to make big money for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So I think he probably feels he's done as much as he can do in Scottish football with Celtic. I think the big question will be whether, and this goes back to what Cillian was just discussing there about Adamida, whether Celtic feel they can let him go in this window, even if to get an appropriate offer from somewhere he wants to go to, because, they would have to go and sign someone else first, I suspect, before they could let Kyogo go.
You mentioned that an appropriate offer. What do you think is a good deal for Celtic if he does go in January, the notoriously difficult window?
Well, I think Atlanta was certainly in the summer were willing to go to about 9.5 million or so, 9.5, 10. I think that would be an excellent offer for a player of his age, his profile. I think Celtic would have to take that very seriously. But again, it has to suit all parties. It has to suit Celtic, it has to suit the player, it has to suit the buying club. He has to find somebody who wants to go. Whether he wants to stay in Europe, we're not too sure. Just seems as if MLS isn't his first choice. But I would have thought anything north of kind of 8 million, 9 million, I would have thought the Celtic would have to take that seriously. But of course, you have to caveat that, Amy, with the fact they have 2 big Champions League games coming up at the end of the month. They have one against Aston Villa, but the big one, of course, is Young Boys Bern, which they really have to win. And if they win that, they'll get the playoffs. That can affect everything. But I wouldn't expect anything to happen until that particular situation is sorted out.
Yeah, massive Champions League games coming up again, coming down so thick and fast. For those games, Cillian, Brendan Rodgers will certainly be wanting Nicholas Kuhn back. He is expected to be back fit for tonight's trip to Dens Park. It's been an incredible season for Kuhn. You really could see how much he's been missing in recent games, particularly in the Highlands. I think you mentioned in there the lack of creativity, perhaps, the why Adamida wasn't getting that service. What is it that's clicking for Nicholas Kuhn this season?
I think from seeing him live, physically he just looks miles ahead to what he was when he first came in. He looks sharp, strong, fitter. And I think when you have all that playing, you have a confidence that you can actually go and do everything that your head wants to do. Sometimes you want to try and do something, and then your body just isn't doing what you want it to do. And I just feel like he has all that at the minute. Once you've got that confidence, your touch becomes better. Everything just feels easier. And I just think from watching him now compared to when he came in last season, I just think physically he just looks so much better.
It's a massive injury boost for Brendan Rodgers. Tony Docherty tonight. Tony Docherty for the last few weeks actually hasn't had his injury problems to seek, but he got a few bits of decent business done yesterday. We will touch on some of the incomings in a little minute, but I just want to firstly, Cillian, go with Dundee managing to keep a hold of Adewumi until the end of the season. Been really impressed by him in recent weeks. How big a boost is that for Dundee, particularly given how well he has performed recently?
Yeah, I think it'll be a massive boost for them. Met Tony Docherty at a game a few weeks ago, and he was talking about Adewumi and saying, I don't think he was confident that he was going to be staying. So the fact that they managed to keep him, I think it shows, how much he means to them, or how well he's been doing, and also how well Dundee are doing for him in terms of from a Burnley point of view. They see he's going there, he's progressing as they want. I think Tony Docherty maybe was afraid that they might take him back to loan him out to maybe a higher level or something. So the fact Burnley are trusting Dundee as well is it's good for Dundee and probably for the game up here as well. That clubs are trusting clubs like Burnley are trusting Dundee to take their players and develop them here.
It's that strategic partnership that Dundee and Burnley have, Stephen, isn't it? There's a lot of talk about various partnerships in the game right now, of course, to different degrees and different levels of involvement. But is this an instance where it's proving to be beneficial?
Oh, massively. I mean, I thought Adewumi was by far the best player on the pitch against Rangers last week. It was up at Danes Park. Just a real live wire, really good player. You've seen various partnerships. You've seen Hibs with Bill Foley. I think they're still to get the benefit of that. Bournemouth tie-up. You've got Dunfermline, of course, who are on the cusp of the SFA, weaving through a kind of takeover for James Bord, and who's a former professional poker player. Also has an interest in Cordoba in Spain. So, yeah, I think, I think we do have a slight issue at the minute with the competitiveness of the league in terms of, you look at it looks like the league title is more or less one in the Premiership. It looks like Johnson's fate sealed at the bottom. So in order to try and improve those issues, we've got to find innovative ways. I mean, they're talking about cooperation agreements, but I think tie-up between clubs, between partnerships is one way to get new talent into the league. And the only question then would be how it stifles Scottish talent or young Scottish players, which is a bit of a big issue at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is, especially if you look at Dundee. They like to go further afield, and again the rumour mill doing the rounds that they're perhaps dipping back into Mexico with Victor Lopez from Monterrey. They signed Vary Samuels yesterday as well from Brighton. Looks a decent deal, but that Lopez one, Stephen, do you know anything about that?
Don't know anything about that, but I was really impressed with Cesar Garza, who made his debut against Rangers last week. Of course, he's got him from Monterrey as well. So yeah, strategic partnerships, and sometimes you just have to throw him in. And Garza was fascinating last weekend because he was smashing into tackles as if he was born for Scottish football. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's necessity. I mean, Tony Docherty was missing 10 players last week. Not sure how many they've got back this week. While Canavan coming back would be a big one for him tonight, although there's a question over his long-term future, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I think these partnerships are probably the way ahead for Scottish clubs, just to try and freshen up the menu a bit.
Smashing into players, that'll always go down well, particularly at Danes Park when the old firm are in town. Cillian, and just finally on tonight's game, I think Tony Docherty said that, didn't he, that he was really impressed by the way that his players fought for one each other and went above and beyond for each other against Rangers. How or where tonight do you see they can be successful against Celtic, or where can they trouble Celtic?
They probably need to come with the same hunger and fight that they probably had previously against Rangers, with getting that good result. I think Celtic will be a different test for them. They'll probably be under a lot more pressure defending their goal, and then I think any chances they get, they kind of have to take any chances that come their way and being clinical and ruthless. I think they know that what Celtic will bring, how tough it'll be for them. I think they were probably a bit disappointed when they played them away. That I think they feel like they put in a good performance. They had a good shape and stuff. One or two moments of lapses in concentration, and they got punished. So it'll probably be, I would say, a similar approach to that, but just probably focusing on keeping it for the full 90 minutes, that focus.
Right then, away from the football itself, another day in the transfer window, another day where there is no let-up in the rumour mill. The latest big one doing the rounds, in truth, to be honest, when is it not doing the rounds, is Hearts captain Lawrence Shankland. He always seems to be at the top of the transfer pops. His latest link is with Turkish second-tier side Amitspor. How likely or unlikely do you see this particular deal happening, Stephen? I think everyone, including Hearts, are perhaps resigned now to the fact that Lawrence Shankland will be leaving, whether this window or at least in the summer.
Yeah, I think Lawrence Shankland's time at Hearts is probably up. I think for both parties it's probably the right thing now. I think he wants to test himself back at a better level, a bit like Kyogo. Probably one last chance to make some decent money, a bit more money, certainly after turning down that very lucrative Hearts contract the last time. So, I don't know about Turkey. I don't know if that's a place for him, but look, I suppose it will be dictated by finance like anything. I think Hearts are starting to utilise this partnership with Jamestown Analytics. I've seen 2 or 3 signings coming in now. You know, Jamie McCart, the striker and what have you, and they're looking at others. So I would have thought the time is probably right for Lawrence Shankland to move on. And listen, I think there's been a bit of conversation amongst Hearts fans when he missed some games there. They looked as if they were actually playing a little bit better. I'm not saying that's because Lawrence Shankland was out of the team, but I think they've seen that there's life after Shankland now. So I think probably it might be wise for that to start sooner rather than later.
One Scotland international who has made his move, Turkey Kilmarnock. What is the difference though? Liverpool's Calvin Ramsey, the right back, has had a torrid time, Cillian, with injuries since moving down south. How important is this move at 21 now, actually, that it works out and he said it himself, that he gets back to enjoying his football?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great signing for Kilmarnock. When he was at Aberdeen and before he moved down to Liverpool, he was the one I thought at the time of all the kind of young Scottish players that he was. If I was a team like Liverpool, he probably would have been the player I'd be trying to buy at that time. So I did have high hopes from when he was going down. Obviously, it hasn't worked out as probably he would have liked so far, but he is only 21. There's time for him. I think it's probably for him just probably staying fit at this for this period. He's coming up to a manager that knows him, probably knows how to manage him as well, which is a big thing at that age. So hopefully it works out for him. Kilmarnock could have a very, very good signing there.
Yeah, knows Derek McInnes from his time at Aberdeen. Paul Sheeran, of course, gave him his debut. And speaking of Aberdeen, Stephen Jimmy Cillian, as expected, been a very, very busy man, particularly on a Monday. A couple of defenders coming in the shape of Alfie Dorrington from Spurs on loan. And then I think Aberdeen are using the word versatile for Alexander Jensen. So as long as he can play somewhere across the back line, he'll be doing all right. Do you expect still for Aberdeen to be throwing the money and really throwing their backing behind Cillian after obviously he built so much credit in the bank during that great run? It's went a little bit off the boil, but it shows that they very much are trusting in the Swedes' approach.
Yeah, a little bit off the boil is a great understatement.
Trying to be polite, it's early.
Yeah, I mean, I've not won in 11 games after I think going the same number at the start of the season, unbeaten. So they were fantastic, but I think there was always a hope that Cillian would have some low-hanging fruit from Scandinavia he could go and get, because you remember Ange Postecoglou went into Celtic and he knew the Japanese market. There's no secret about the Swedish market. Every decent club and country in Europe is looking at Sweden. But I think the likes of Alexander Jensen, I think Cillian knows what he's getting. That's important. I think if you look at the Aberdeen team, I think 9 of the starting 11 recent weeks have still been effectively players who were playing for Barry Robson. So they're probably a bit unrealistic to expect that they're suddenly going to, continue this amazing turnaround. They're always going to drop off at some point. I think the scale of the drop-off's been a bit alarming. They need to fix it. I don't know that Ibrox would necessarily be the place they would want to go and fix it. But nothing gets Aberdeen up quite like a game against Rangers. So I don't know what would the eligibility. I don't think Jens would have a work permit through for Rangers, would he? So I mean, I don't know how different the team's going to be tonight, but certainly over the course of the month, you talk that Aberdeen will start to just reinvigorate a bit and just start finding a bit of energy and freshness which is gone from their game.
And speaking of Rangers, it was yet another tumultuous weekend for the Ibrox club. Chief Executive Patrick Stewart provided a brief. There was then the walkout from some fans, which was then greeted with boos by other fans. Stephen, a few days on from this now, we're still speaking about it. We are now finally moving into the next stage, of course, with, as you mentioned, Aberdeen to come on Wednesday night. We will hear from Philippe Clement later today. What do you think what can we expect? What do you think we will hear? Where are we really after the weekend?
Well, things will probably settle down a bit because, I mean, you would think Rangers will just about have enough for Aberdeen. Weirdly, despite their pretty awful away record, there were 3 wins and 11 away games in Scotland. I think if you go back further to last year, you're talking 8-21, which is a really grim record for Rangers. But weirdly, you would almost fancy them to get something at Old Trafford, the Europa League, because they're probably coming up against the one big team which is flakier than them. But I think the problem for Rangers will be when they start getting away from these home games and they go back to these away games again. They've got, just looking at a list here, they've got Dundee United, they've got Hearts, they've got Canavan, they've got Celtic, Dundee, they've got Aberdeen. That's all before the split away from home. The 5 of those 6 grounds have dropped points at already this season. So that, I think, is going to be another test of the patience of Philip Clement, of the Rangers board, and of the Rangers support, who seem a bit split on whether they really want to walk out of games or not. I mean, you have some who think that you should be, if you're a supporter, you should live up to the name. And I think that was a majority in Sunday, or it was a really weird day at Ibrox. That was a strange experience to see the Union Bears, some of the Rangers Supporters Association walking out and the vast majority booing them and staying behind. So, be interested to see what it's going to be like at Ibrox the next 2 games.
What was it like being actually at Ibrox during that moment, Stephen? Because I think everyone was sort of expecting it, but it was like, is it going to actually come through? These things are, perhaps mentioned, but not always done to fulfilment.
Well, it's one of these days where the result was almost of irrelevance because everybody was there for the 55th minute. I mean, I'm speaking as a journalist here to some extent, but I think everyone wanted to see what would happen. And it was a bit weird because obviously Rangers scored 3 goals in 25 minutes, helped by St Johnstone being very generous visitors. And that probably calms things down a little bit. But it was strange because even in the early stages, we were peering over the media gantry down to the enclosure and there were fans kind of fighting amongst themselves. Supporters who were applauding the banner from the Union Bears and others who were saying, come on, get a grip, we need to support the team. And there was a bit of bickering going on down below us. So it was a strange kind of fraught and fragile day. And I think there'll be a bit more of that, although you would think it will probably settle down a little bit now that the points have been made. But as I say, I suspect there's a stay of execution before the really testing run of away games starts again, Amy.
Well, the Union Bears call time on 55 minutes. I think we'll call time on today's podcast. And now my many thanks go to Stephen McGowan and Cillian Sheridan for joining me on the podcast. And a reminder, you can catch Cillian and his other day job on Friday as Brecon City host Hearts in the Scottish Cup. That one will be televised on the BBC Scotland channel from 7:30. For now, though, remember we are here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye for now.
Sir Alex Ferguson is the most successful British manager of all time.
Nobody is above him or this football club.
So how did an apprentice toolmaker from Glasgow become one of the most iconic figures in sporting history?
His strength of character, his determination, the fight in him.
He can be persuasive, he can be charming, he can be frightening.
I'm Kelly Cates, and this is Sporting Giants Sir Alex Ferguson.
I didn't want to feel, I couldn't feel.
Listen on BBC Sounds.